It's AJ Dybantsa season in Provo, but this BYU team is about so much more than the Uber freshman.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Happy Tuesday. Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I want to thank you for making us your first listener watch to get your Tuesday going the right way and remind you that you can catch every single episode ad-free on Amazon Music. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off that very first purchase you make. Might even help you get to that very good BYU football team that's rolling strong right now. We'll even look at that a little bit later. Special shout out to all the everydayers who are here with us today, as well as all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. Man, we have a great time in there. The chatter is really picking up now as we're just under, I should say, 4 weeks away from the regular season starting. And so that means we're coming to the end of all our team previews. We've gotten to some of the bigger teams now, and one of those is today's team, our 25th team preview, the BYU Cougars. We're talking storylines, personnel, Kevin Young, year 2, crazy stuff. Really excited about that. Obviously, AJ Dybantsa and all that brings with it the price tag and all of it. To help me break it all down is our buddy, the host of Locked On Cougars, BYU edition, I should add, Jake Hatch. Jake, it's great to be together, man.
Isaac, it's always good, my man. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're thick in the middle of football season. Baseball playoffs are going on. Like basketball is about, dude, it's a special time in our lives of sports. So let me just remind everybody back what BYU did last year in Kevin Young's first year in Provo. 26-10 were the Cougs, 14-6 in Big 12 play. At one point, this team was 11-6 overall and 2-4 in Big 12 play before going off a 12-2 stretch run at the end of the regular season to tie for third in the Big 12. Got a 4 seed, beat Iowa State, ultimately lost to Houston in the semifinals. Understandable there. NCAA tournament, beat VCU, beat Wisconsin, and then I think I'm going to have to use the word blitzed here, Jake. I don't know any other word to use, by Alabama in the Sweet 16, 113-88. I don't like to use that word, but watching that game, it was a blitzing. Richie Saunders led the way last year, 16.5 points a game. He hit 43% of his threes. That's insane. And 83.5% from the free throw line. And my man is back. It's going to be great. But Jake, look, like it or not, there's literally nowhere else I can start in this conversation with you than asking about the media circus that AJ Dybantsa brings to town. What's the story? What's the vibes? What's the feeling with AJ coming in?
It is a bit of a circus. There's just zero doubt about that. The fun part is it has brought a lot of attention to BYU basketball that they quite literally have never had, Isaac. We're talking Red Bull, Nike. They're just having like these different events. He's got the who's who, it feels like, of the basketball world want to associate with this young man. And it's incredible to watch the way he's handled it, because a lot of guys be swallowed up in all of it. But to his credit, his whole focus is on developing his game. He works as hard as anybody in practices, from everything I've heard and seen. And you can tell this is a kid that is driven. He wants to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft next year. And he knows he's got a lot of competition with Darren Peterson, the Emmett kid. They got a number of guys who could challenge him for that title. But I can tell you, he's not going to cede a single inch if he can help it.
Man, it's so fun. And it's really cool because, like, using 247's numbers, he is the highest rated recruit ever at BYU for basketball. But right behind him is his fellow freshman, Xavier Staten, who is the second highest recruit BYU's ever gotten. And, you know, like, he would be the headline any other year for the Cougs, man. It's crazy stuff. And Jake, you mentioned it. BYU is a factor in major college basketball now. Not too many years removed from leaving the West Coast Conference to join the Big 12. Just for you covering this team all the time, how much of a whirlwind has that been?
It's been wild, because think about this. 2 years ago, Mark Pope leaves BYU for Kentucky and kind of let the Cougars feeling a little high and dry. And to their credit, they go out, get their top target on the market in Kevin Young, and he comes in, and Mark Pope did some really, really cool and great things at BYU, but Kevin Young has come in less than 2 years, has elevated to a level that nobody in BYU basketball history could ever dream of having achieved. And it sure looks like the good times are just really kind of beginning. Jaeger Demon and those guys last year were incredible. You mentioned Richie Saunders. He's back for another tour with AJ Dybantsa. That two-man game should be absolutely phenomenal. So, yeah, everything looks like it's roses here in Provo. And the basketball program, I've said this often on my podcast, I'm very reticent to wish away a college football season because it's my pride and joy. I love college football. But the way BYU basketball is shaping up should be a really, really fun winter here in Utah.
And I mean, as you said, with Mark Pope leaving, I felt that too. I was like, I get it for Coach Pope, right? He wants to go back to his alma mater. It makes sense. But yeah, that high and dry is a good phrase for it. I was like, man, that's crazy. And Kevin Young comes in, and I'm going to imagine this is almost a stupid question for me to even ask, Jake, but I'm going to.
Okay.
Would BYU folks say, yes, Kevin Young was the right hire, right? Like, I just want to make sure the answer to that is yes.
Oh yeah, 110%. Like he has proven to be everything they could have hoped for and then some. He's completely changed the game when it comes to BYU in the recruiting sphere. Yes, I know that NIL plays a role in that, and the boosters that have been forking over some pretty hefty checks to help BYU be a force there. But a lot of these guys wouldn't pick BYU even if it were just for NIL, because Kevin Young has an NBA pedigree. He's got a bunch of these NBA stars on speed dial. He can call up Chris Paul. He can call up Devin Booker. He can call up Kevin Durant, Joel Embiid. No matter who it is, talk to these young men and say, hey, let me have this guy vouch for what I can do. And it resonates with these young men because they see these guys playing in the NBA and they aspire to be in those exact same shoes at some point down the line.
Man, and for at least AJ, that's a very realistic possibility that we should see after this 1 year at Provo. Soak it up, folks, because as Jake said, whether it's AJ or Darren Peterson, we did our Kansas show yesterday, whether it's Cam Boozer down at Duke, whether it's Nate Amen to Tennessee, these dudes are going to be out the door in about 9 months. So soak it up and enjoy it. Cougs fans, this season is going to be special. That said, Jake, I feel like, a lot of the preseason way too early prognosticators, there's a little bit more of a spectrum. Like, I feel like early in the offseason, I was seeing a lot of like around the 4 or 5 range for the preseason ranking. I've seen some others like maybe as low as the late teens or something like that. In your mind, as you think about both BYU and kind of the national landscape, what do you think is the right landing spot for the Cougars preseason top 25, which we expect to get next Monday, by the way?
Yeah, it's coming fast. I think I would place BYU somewhere between 5 and 10. I think that's the right spot to put them because there are still obviously guys on this roster who need to prove that they are the caliber that BYU believes they are, because we haven't even mentioned Robert Wright III. We haven't mentioned Keba Keita, guys like Kennard Davis Jr. have come in that factor into this lineup that should make them elite, but they need to prove that. So I think that the back half of that top 10 would be the place I would place them if I were ranking them.
I think that's the smart preseason thing to do, right? They might prove a higher ceiling. They might prove a floor below that. And we'll get to our floor and ceiling conversation later. But I think that's the smart place for right now, Jake. That makes a lot of sense to me. Now, you said it perfectly. You made my segue for me. Thank you so much. AJ Dybantsa, yes, he's the storyline. But don't forget, BYU returns leading scorer Richie Saunders, and there's a bunch of other dudes coming around, and we're going to unpack the personnel and look at this whole roster coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Prize Picks. Look, every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. So don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards, that's my fantasy quarterback, oh, by the way, or Saquon Barkley running it in for a touchdown. Do all that, and you're in the game. Prize Picks, I love this. They just added stacks. It's a really neat feature. Maybe there's one player you really believe in and you want to ride with all his stuff. You can do that in one lineup. It's called Stacks. So cool. Or how about the new injury reboot feature? If your player leaves early and doesn't return, it doesn't count against you. So download the Prize Picks app today and use Locked On College to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code Locked On College for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Jake, obviously this is our personnel segment, but we had to talk AJ Dybantsa in the biggest storylines because, it's just what it is. But it's almost wild to me how much I think outside of BYU, because I'm sure you've been talking about it a ton, but how much other people have just, it's like Richie Saunders doesn't exist or something. I'm like, this dude dropped 16 and a half a game last year, led BYU in scoring, and he's like an afterthought. Like, can you please remind everybody what an absolute dude Richie Saunders is?
Well, here's the thing. He is the reigning Big 12 most improved player of the year. He was an all-conference honoree. You mentioned the fact he scored a shade over 16 points. And crazy thing is, there are a lot of national pundits out there that are still very high on him and believe he actually can have a better season this year, even though it would be overshadowed by anything that AJ Dybantsa does, because AJ is just going to suck up a lot of the attention. That's just a simple fact of life with the caliber of athlete that he is. But the nice part is BYU has two premier wing players to run their offense through, and that should lend itself to being able to essentially go at any team they play in any way, shape, or form that they want to. Because if AJ's getting doubled by somebody, pass it off to Richie, and he's more than capable of creating his own offense, his own shot, and drawing the defense to him as well. So I really like what they have created with this two wing tandem that should, in theory, lead to them some pretty high heights.
And what that does is makes life even easier for Rob Wright III coming over from Baylor to run the offense, right? Jake, am I looking at that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. Rob Wright III is going to be the point guard. He's going to be initiating this. And essentially his whole thing is to play off of these two guys in AJ Dybantsa and Richie Saunders. And that, as you mentioned, it's going to make his life a whole lot easier because he's an undersized guard. There's just no bones about that. He's 6'1", but the capability of having those guys draw a lot of the attention, the whole draw and kick game, and his ability both on the dribble and off the ball, he could absolutely be a force that is going to be kind of like the tertiary option here in the backcourt for BYU, but no less effective.
That it's funny to start thinking about it. Like because of what Richie has already shown his capability to do, but the unknown of AJ, Jake, I've really sat and wrestled. Like, I don't know. I'm a dork and I like to just sit around and play these games in my head. Like, who's BYU's leading scorer this year? Because it's like, AJ absolutely can do that, but it's not like he has to walk around and be this walking bucket to help BYU win basketball games. There's other stuff that he does so well, but I can't decide which one of them it's going to be.
I think there are people out there who believe that like AJ is going to be averaging like 25 a game. I actually think it's going to be far less than that. If he goes over 20 a game on average, I'd be a bit surprised because he's pretty selfless in terms of his overall play. He's willing to pass it off. He's willing to dish and cut to the rim and do whatever it needs to win basketball games. So I think that those two will be your leading scorers, but we could be talking one guy averages 17.1 points per game. The other one averages 16 point whatever. And they're right there, right in tandem with one another. And as I mentioned, one night it might be AJ going off. The next night it's Richie's turn to really shine. And that's the nice part is it's kind of a pick your poison thing for these opposing teams.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about having these two dynamic wing players. Good luck game planning for that if you're the opposition of we got one legit wing defender. Who do we put that guy on, right? Like that is the dilemma that BYU causes for the opposition. Let's stick with these transfers. Jake, you mentioned Kennard Davis earlier. I know there's a couple other guys as well. What do you make of the rest of the transfer class here?
So I really like Kennard Davis Jr. He's kind of going to be the guy that if you watched Moet Mag last year, is kind of the defensive stopper, a 3-and-D guy. That's what Kennard Davis Jr. figures to be, but even more offensively well-rounded than Moet was. And I thought Moet was actually really, really good when called upon in different situations offensively. Kennard Davis Jr. he's a junkyard dog type player. He's a little undersized in terms of overall height, but he is not going to be bullied by anybody out there. So he'll be that kind of that premier wing defender for BYU. I really like what Tyler Miras brings as a transfer from Idaho. You need a sharpshooter. I know Richie Saunders is capable. He just had 43% from three last year. Well, guys like John Rothstein think that Richie could make 100 threes this year.
Jeez,
guess what?
Dude.
If he doesn't make it, the other threes are probably going to go to guys like Tyler Miras, who's a very, very dead-eye shooter in his own right. So I like that. I also like what guys like Nate Pickens and Dominic Diomande also bring in terms of their overall versatility. They may not be the polished products that they figure to be down the line, but the transfer class, Kevin Young once again proved that he is has a very keen eye for talent out there in the transfer portal and knows exactly what he wants to round out his roster. And he went out and targeted these dudes and brought them in, and they figure to be key parts of what hopefully is a deep run in the NCAA tournament.
Maroons last year, 73 out of 192 from beyond the arc at Idaho, 38%. Man, you tag that alongside of what Richie's going to bring, and this could be another deadly BYU three-point attack, which we've become accustomed to, both in the Pope era and now the Young era, man. Spacing and scoring, and it's a lot of fun to watch. Obviously, we've talked about AJ, and we mentioned Xavier Staten earlier, but we haven't talked enough about him. As I said, if not for AJ, he would be the highest rated recruit in BYU history at 247.
Yeah, that's the thing. Xavier Staten, I think that he may play a little bit more of a reserve role early on this season, only because a guy like Keba Keita, I think you would talk about guys being overlooked. Keba Keita is a guy who's an absolute freak athletically. the ability of guys like AJ and Richie and Rob Wright III to run the pick and roll with him, he's going to dunk on more guys' heads than I feel like we're even giving him credit for. And he's become a force on the defensive side of the court as well, even though he's only 6'8". He's got the ability to hang with anybody. Looks like he's chiseled straight out of granite, and he is a guy that I think is going to be overlooked, but is going to be a key part of BYU's roster. And that also doesn't discount what Kadeem Mboop, who was a guy who enrolled last December, redshirted this season. All I've heard about him during these offseason workouts is he's a 6'9", do-everything guy, is capable of playing center, capable of defending a two-guard, capable of scoring with the best of them on certain days. So the nice part is the versatility, the size, the length, the athleticism of this roster. Last year's roster was really, really good, Isaac. This year's roster looks like it's light years better than that.
I completely agree with you, Jake. Also, Mboop from Senegal. Can we just get you to say his last name one more time? Because it's so fun.
Kadeem Mboop. Yep, there you go.
I love it. I love it so hard. College basketball and football, like all name teams, are always some of the most fun. Anybody else you want to point out? You talked about Keba Keita obviously coming back. Anybody else, either newcomers or returners that we've probably hit the big ticket guys, but anybody that you think will play an important reserve role that maybe we haven't gotten to yet?
Well, the other guy I would look at as a three-point shooter, a spot up kind of in the corner dude, is Brody Kozlowski. He was a former Mr. Basketball here in the state of Utah. That's the best player in the state. He is a guy who's dealt with some injury concerns so far during his time in Provo, but provided he's healthy, this is a kid who's more than capable of kind of being that drive and kick type guy. He stands out in the corner. One guy forces the action, whether it's an AJ or a Richie or Rob Wright. They see him in the corner wide open. They dish it out to him. And if he can hit 35+% from three, that adds to an already deadly arsenal of shooters on this roster. And you mentioned the fact that BYU, they're at the rim or beyond the arc team. This is an NBA in college game format that Kevin Young has brought to BYU. They very rarely will take a mid-range shot. So a guy like Brody Kozlowski, keep an eye on him in terms of the three-point ability.
I think that's such a good point, Jake, that you make about the gravity that both AJ is going to have and that Richie already has, and everyone else is the grateful beneficiary of that gravity, and that's going to be a lot of fun to watch as well. All right, Jake, look, I know it's often about like who actually finishes the games, who's getting starters minutes, but everybody always wants to know who's the starting five, man. I need your early October starting five prediction.
I don't think I'm going to break news to anybody, but I think Rob Wright III is your starting point guard. Your two guard is Richie Saunders. The three man on the wing is obviously AJ Dybantsa. I think Kennard Davis Jr. plays that 4 spot, even though it's a 4 out, 1 in alignment probably here. And then it's Keba Keita in the middle. That was the one I think almost anybody, if you're looking at BYU's roster, you probably could have penciled that in. But I think it's a well-rounded starting five. Has got a lot of versatility to it. And then you have another 5 or 6 guys beyond that. They played a very, very deep bench last year, Isaac. And I kept questioning it all season long. When's Kevin Young cut down this rotation to 8 guys? He never did. They played as many as 12 guys. And to his credit, it worked out. And I think that he has intentions, if they prove capable, of keeping a very large rotation this season as well.
Going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. I've got the exact same starting five. As you said, it's, sometimes it's like, these two are penciled in, but these others is like, I don't know. This is one of those where it's like, it would be a shock if it's not those 5 for me, Jake, right? It would
have to be an injury or something unforeseen to have that change. Yeah.
Man, fingers crossed. I've got all sorts of wood to knock on right here.
Yes, exactly.
And so we're good. Jake, is there anybody, I know we've gone through everybody, but is there anyone you would look at and say, hey, nation, stand up and take notice because this dude is about to break out in a major way?
I think it's going to be Kennard Davis Jr. We've talked about how AJ Dybantsa and Richie Saunders are going to kind of steal the headlines for this team, and Rob Wright III and Keba Keita are obviously capable of dominating in their own way. but you need a guy who's capable of playing both ends of the court. And that's exactly what Kennard Davis Jr. was. He was a featured player at Southern Illinois, and he has come to BYU, and he's been willing to kind of step into, I guess a secondary role is probably the best way to say it, and do some of that dirty work that is going to be critical to the success that BYU hopes to have this season. But the nice part is, I mentioned Mawit Mag last year. He emerged as a legit 3-and-D stopper for BYU and was a key part of that run to the Sweet 16 they had a season ago. I'm telling you, Kennard Davis Jr. has got all of that, but even more offensive polish to him. So don't be surprised if he makes a bigger name for himself than some might expect.
Yeah. One thing I really haven't processed that much, but I've kind of thought about it as we've been talking, is AJ, if I'm thinking correctly, is the tallest guy in that starting five at 6'9". And as you said, Rob Wright, a little undersized at 6'1", Keba Keita undersized at 6'8". Like how we saw that last year, right? Like having to deal with that. I know obviously Yegor was a big guard, but with some of that undersized nature, how do you think Kevin Young schemes some X's and O's around that?
His whole thing is about spacing. He is of paramount importance in his offense is the spacing component, because he believes that differentiates the ability to pack the paint. Let's say you go up against like the likes of Purdue, where they've got those big 7-footers in the middle and they want to pack the paint on you. His whole philosophy is, yeah, we're going to drag you out to the perimeter and then we'll just 3 you to death. That's the thing about this is, yes, they may be undersized. I believe AJ, probably will be the tallest guy in that starting lineup. That does not mean that they're going to be undersized in terms of their overall flexibility and execution. They have a Xavier Staten, who's a legit 7-footer.
Exactly. Thank you.
Who could come in and fill in. Kadeem Mboop, he is 6'9", 230 pounds, and very much looks the part of a guy who can play very capably in the post and providing that muscle that you need sometimes to defend those bigger guys that you play up against at times, depending on who the team is that you're going up against. So I think that they have the versatility to do whatever they need to do, but the whole thing is all about spacing, creating matchups for themselves, and then obviously executing when they have those opportunities.
And as you said earlier too, when you think about Keba Keita, yeah, he's 6'8", but he's chiseled out of granite, and so that's a different 6'8" than if I was 6'8". Man, I'm like Pillsbury Doughboy 6'8" if it was me, you know.
See, the thing is, Isaac, his siblings, he has, I think, a brother and a sister who are professional volleyball players.
Really?
He's got a legit 40-inch vertical. His brother is playing professional volleyball, I think in Asia, it might be South Korea or something like that. People say that his brother jumps higher than he does, somewhere in the 45 to 46-inch range. So there's freakish athleticism in that gene pool for the Keita family, and he brings it to the basketball court with obviously the brawn he also possesses.
Dude, those volleyball players are something different, man. The way they get up, I'd be hitting everything into the net, Jake. I don't have any hope there, man. All right, look, it's a very manageable non-con slate for the Cougars. How are things ultimately going to play out for BYU this season in season 2 for Kevin Young's season predictions and a look at the schedule coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about game time, y'all, college football is back, and we could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endlessly long lines, there's hidden fees, the prices shoot up when you get to checkout. Nah, I don't need any of that. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to you, the fan. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Honestly, it's faster, it's cheaper, and it's less stressful than any other place I've found to buy tickets. And I love that I can find views from my seat right there in the app. I was looking ahead, BYU at Arizona this weekend. Tickets you can get in the door right now for $74 on the Game Time app. Pretty good steal there. Two pretty strong teams. I think Arizona's only got one loss themselves. Good stuff there. Should be a great game in the Big 12. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at Square. Look, you need to know that your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square, and there's certain businesses that really truly make the neighborhood feel like home. Whether it's the local sports bar that's packed on game day, maybe it's that coffee shop that knows your name and your order the second you walk in the door, or that corner deli that's been faithfully serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Here's what that looks like. Spending money doesn't just support the business, it supports the people behind it and the community all around it. These local spots are what make neighborhoods feel like home, and so many of them run on Square, who is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses all over the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You're going to be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Let's take a look now at BYU's schedule, and we've got non-con action coming up. Big 12 has 18 conference games. That means there'll be 13 non-con games. But before we get there, got a couple fun exhibitions, including 2 days from now, the blue and white game at Marriott Madness. Should be a lot of fun Thursday coming up. But then I love it. BYU is playing 2 high major teams with their exhibition games at Nebraska Saturday, October 18th, and then sort of semi-hosting Carolina at the Delta Center on Friday, December, good grief, October 24th. That weekend is loaded with high-level exhibition games. Y'all buckle up. It's going to be bonkers. But then as for the non-con games of note against high majors, I love it. I love it. I beg for it every year. Can we please get high major games on day one? And BYU's delivering. Our first opportunity to see AJ Dybantsa in the regular season is going to be against Villanova with the brand new head coach, Kevin Willard, coming over from Maryland. That's going to be in Vegas, part of the Hall of Fame series on Monday, November 3rd. Next big high major game, and this is the big daddy, Saturday, November 15th against UConn, another part of the Hall of Fame series. This one's up in Boston at TD Garden, where the Celtics play. Should be a blast. Friday, November 21st against Wisconsin, also in the Delta Center. Then the ESPN Events Invitational on Thanksgiving and Black Friday. Thanksgiving's against Miami, and then Black Friday's either Dayton or Georgetown. And last high major game of the non-con slate is Tuesday, December 9th against Clemson, Jimmy V Classic, back up at MSG, the world's most famous arena. Jake, you look at this schedule, and I know there's quite a few high majors, but it feels doable to me.
Yeah, they stratified this non-conference slate to give themselves a chance in all of these contests. It's not like they play them all in a row where you're like, okay, we're going to be bruised and battered trying to win these games. You mentioned the fact they're going to travel a lot. That is a big part of this. BYU is going to be on the road a lot in the non-conference slate. 3 of those games, as you mentioned, in the Delta Center. But the thing is, Kevin Young's whole philosophy is kind of what Arizona's been doing over the last couple of years under Tommy Lloyd is, you know what, we're going to beef up that non-conference slate. We're going to absolutely, in some ways, torture ourselves in the non-conference. Probably going to lose a handful of those, but we'll be better for it once we hit conference play. Because you mentioned it earlier. At one point, BYU in Big 12 play last year was 2-4. And I can tell you, having sat in those press conferences with Kevin Young, he pointed directly to BYU's lackluster non-conference slate as a big reason why they started slow in Big 12 play. To their credit, they picked it up. That 12-2 run, 9 straight wins to close out the regular season. That's in credit to that team for picking it up and figuring it out on the fly. But he, I think, is absolutely intent on this being more of what they'll do in the non-conference slate is play high-level games, whether it is a game against UConn and TD Garden out there in Boston, which will be a home game for AJ Dybantsa because he's from Brockton, Massachusetts, which is a stone's throw away. He gets to go home and play in front of his hometown crowd. But all of these games are there to test BYU and have them better prepared for when Big 12 play arrives in January.
And then, Jake, as we turn to look at the Big 12 slate, there's this stretch from mid-January to early February that is probably, to me, the most daunting of it, which is funny because just before it, there's a game against Utah at Utah on January 10th, and then literally 3 games later hosting Utah. I don't understand that, why the schedule makers did that, whatever. Here's this 6-game stretch. Saturday, January 17th at Texas Tech, then that second game hosting Utah on January 24th, hosting Arizona on Monday, January 26th. I'm assuming that's Big Monday. I don't have that schedule right in front of me, but that's Saturday, Monday turnaround. Yeah, there you go. And then that next Saturday, January 31st at Kansas. And then Wednesday, the 4th, maybe a little bit of a breather, all due respect to the Pokes, but heading down to Stillwater, we'll see how that goes. But then the back end of this gauntlet is Saturday, February 7th, hosting Houston. So over the course of 6 games, 4 of those are at Tech, hosting Arizona, at Kansas, hosting Houston. My man, that is tough.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. That stretch will either prove that they are contenders in the Big 12 or essentially say that they're pretenders. They're playing second fiddle to somebody in this league. The biggest thing, Isaac, and I'm a bit perturbed by this, is the fact that we only get one matchup in the regular season between BYU and Kansas. Kind of my only complaint about the schedule is that we only get Darren Peterson versus AJ Dybantsa one time in the regular season. Now you hope that maybe they match up in the Big 12 tournament or something like that to get a second matchup, but they could have easily fixed that. But that's beside the point here. To your point, that stretch is going to show us everything I feels like we need to know about BYU and Big 12 play, because they have struggled mightily against Houston. The Cougars, speaking of the Red Cougars, have had the Blue Cougars number since they both joined the Big 12. And BYU wants to be top dog in this league, and to do that, you've got, or say top cat, I guess, to keep the pun going. If they want to pull it off, they've got to be able to beat Houston. They've got to be able to beat Kansas. Now, they've gone to Kansas and they've won in Fog Allen Fieldhouse. My dad was there when they did it the first year there in the Big 12. Absolutely remarkable that they pulled that off like they did. But if they really want to be the force in the Big 12 that they believe they can be, you've got to prove you can beat these really, really good teams. The other teams are considered to be the favorites alongside yourself.
Dude, it's absolutely wild the way that Houston has dominated the conference since they came in 2 years ago, which has coincided with Kansas not being Kansas. That's been equally as weird. Jake, it's hilarious. Almost verbatim, the way you said that about Kansas and BYU. Literally, Derek Johnson said that exact same thing. Like, why are we only getting this game once? So both of you dudes are in alignment with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jake, let's make some predictions now. All that said, non-con conference, where do you think BYU winds up in the regular season standings? And let's make some record predictions as well, both for non-con and conference play.
So my thought is, and this may sound bad, but I actually been picking BYU to finish third in the league. I think that Houston still ends up number one in the regular season. I think BYU may pick up a couple of losses just due to scheduling, because you mentioned the Utah Sunday, because BYU doesn't practice on Sundays, and then a big Monday versus Arizona. That could be a loss just due to the scheduling and the like of it. And those are the type of games that obviously when it comes down to the end of the season and where you're seated in the Big 12 tournament, those results matter. So I think BYU finishes third, but that does not mean that by any means that they are not a contender. I think they're going to be just as good as anybody in this conference. They just so happen to sit in that 3-hole.
Nice thing about that Saturday, Monday turnaround is they're both at home. That is a helpful part of that. I did have them second, but I could see a world where, dude, like Texas Tech is going to be legit yet again. JT Toppin sticking around. And so I hear that. Like, my first thought was I bridged between 2 and 3, and I said, Schade, you can't be that wishy-washy. You need a number. So I went on the high side because I wanted to stay in BYU's good graces. You know, Jake, that's where I'm at. Look,
your fans are going to love you for that, by the way.
Good. I'm here for you guys. Let's go. Non-con, Jake, I know there's some challenging games. As you said, there's a lot of travel. I went 12-1, and maybe that's too high. But it's like, I think they lose the UConn game up at Boston. That just makes sense. But I think the rest of it is very doable. There are other high majors, but Villanova is still trying to figure out who they are. Wisconsin, that's a tricky game in the Delta Center. But where did I just say it is? It's in the Delta Center. Good luck for that. Miami's still not back to be in Miami yet. Georgetown's on the come up a little bit, and Clemson is not what Clemson has been the last several years. And so I just legitimately, like, that UConn game is the only one that gives me a lot of pause. The others are all very winnable.
They are winnable, but call me a cynic, whatever. I've got BYU losing 2. And I think one of the 2 comes in that MTE down there in Florida, because I just think the back-to-back nature of that, MTEs are tough to deal with because it's still early on in the season. You're still figuring out rotations and the like. So I do think they may pick up a loss to one of those teams. And it probably is a close loss, but I'm with you on the UConn thing. But I do think BYU is very capable of going, I think, 10-2. Sorry, that'd be 11-2.
Yeah.
In the non-con. And I think that'd be a very, very good mark for them.
Dude, yes. If we're going into Big 12 play 11-2, I'm not sneezing at that. I'm writing home giddily about it. What about Big 12 play, Jake? We got 18 games there.
See, that's the thing about this is a league, man, that they're gonna beat up on each other. You mentioned Texas Tech. Kansas looks like they could finally be back under Bill Self. We'll see what happens. Houston looks like they're not going to drop anything. It feels like they're just going to keep doing what they do under Kelvin Sampson. And I'm not accepting literally anybody else in this league. BYU has to go to West Virginia, and that's been a really, really long trip, and it can be a tough trip, in fact. So here's the deal. I think BYU ends up 18 games like 14-4, 13-5. And that's right where I think they finish in third place as a result of that. But depending on how the other league teams go, you could still easily end up in second place just based on tiebreaker. So that's the point of this is that, yeah, it may sound like there's a lot of losses there, but don't expect anybody to swing through the Big 12 unscathed. That's just not going to happen.
Like that 19-1 that Houston ran off last year was stupid and something we will never see again. Texas Tech was second at 15-5 when we saw 20 games. And so, yeah, 14-4 is easily second or third place because of how this conference beats up on itself. So Jake, if we're going 14-4 and 11-2, you would have the Cougs at 25-6. I'm that one game better at 26-5. Let me give you my floor and ceiling and you push back on it where you see fit. The floor would be dropping 3 non-con games, right? Like, I don't think that's ideal. Lose 7 or more Big 12 games. AJ Dybantsa is good, but maybe not like the elite we thought he would be. Richie Saunders regresses a little bit, and Rob Wright has a sophomore slump. His size is an issue, and like that kind of Big 3 we're expecting can't get it going. The ceiling, though, Rob Wright is everything you need him to be. He runs the team perfectly. The AJ Saunders, well, yeah, sure. Why not? Yep. Richie Dybantsa and AJ Saunders is a dynamic 1-2 punch, a dynamic just duo that can't be stopped in the Big 12. Non-con dropping just one game, pushing Houston at the top of the Big 12 and end up with a 1 or 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, make it to at least the Elite 8. That would be my ceiling, Jake.
Yeah, I don't have anything really to push back on there because I think you nailed exactly what I would have said in terms of the floor and ceiling. But I will just echo what AJ Dybantsa said in his very own words. The floor for him and for BYU this season, Sweet 16. The ceiling, Final Four, national championship type run, which, by the way, Isaac, you know this as well as I do. BYU has that really distinct mark, and it's one they want to get rid of having the most NCAA tournament appearances without a Final Four berth. AJ Dybantsa wants to snap that streak. He wants to lead BYU to heights that they have never achieved before. And if he pulls it off, he will be an all-time legend in Cougarville for years to come.
Absolute legend, man. That would be crazy to see, but it would be incredible, and we'd both be here for it, obviously. All right, Jake, any parting words, maybe like more, we did floor ceiling. What about the realistic projection for you? Where do you think BYU ultimately gets in terms of like seeding and round?
I think they end up with a 2 seed. I think if you finish like third in the Big 12, that probably gets you the 2 seed. And I think it all depends on how the brackets work out. Now, BYU, obviously, with the Sunday play issue, they'll be in a Thursday, Saturday format. That's just part of the way the NCAA seeds things. Right. So that could play good or bad in their favor. That depends on what it looks like at the end of the season. But I am going to say it right now. I think BYU makes the Elite 8 matches. Danny Ainge's mark. That's the farthest BYU's ever gone in the NCAA tournament. But I am absolutely fingers crossed that they pull off a Final Four berth and we see them playing in early April.
The Thursday, Saturday sites for the first and second round are Buffalo, New York, Greenville, Oklahoma City, and Portland. And it really, OKC is probably the best one there. In terms of
that or Portland, because Portland would have pretty good representation. True. But the thing about BYU fans, doesn't matter where they play, Isaac, they will show up in droves.
And I think those are honestly better than the Friday, Sunday, because it's Tampa, Philly, San Diego, and St. Louis. So the Thursday, Saturday works out really well here. Should we go to the second weekend? Why not? Thursday, Saturday, there is Houston, Texas, San Jose. The Friday, Sunday is Chicago and DC. So, honestly, from a location standpoint, those Thursday, Saturdays all work out, Jake. Great stuff, brother. It's so good to be together. I'm so excited for this team. Year 2 of Kevin Young. And, man, the way the personnel is going to come together, I can't wait to see it. And I think we might have to have a little crossover on our Carolina BYU shows at some point here in a couple weeks.
We are going to have to do that, absolutely, because it's not very often the North Carolina ventures this far west. So even though it's an exhibition game, it's still going to be absolutely packed. The Delta Center will be rocking and rolling, and we will do a crossover for sure ahead of that one. The nice part is basketball season is going to be a really, really fun season in Provo because it's been not too long ago that they were a little bit of an afterthought as compared to BYU football. But when you have AJ Dybantsa and what BYU looks like on paper right now, it'll be some pretty exciting times in Utah this season.
Here's how big that exhibition game is. It's going to be on ESPN that Friday night. Really crazy stuff, Jake. Yeah. Man, I cannot wait. We'll hook up for that. Guys, if you've not looked into subbing into Locked On Cougars, BYU, the Blue Cougs, is that what you said earlier?
Blue Cougars.
You need to make sure you go follow Jake there at Jacob C. Hatch, Jacob with a C. Make sure you get in on that. If you've not followed our show, subscribe to Locked On College Basketball in video and audio as well. We'd love to have you. Also, if you're not in the Locked On College Basketball Discord, man, it's a great place to be. We're hanging out, chatting hoops all the time, and we'd love to see you there. That link's in the show notes. As always, I want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Cheers to the Mick Bruins. Let's go Wild Popes, and until tomorrow.
Peace.